Key agencies and officials from the Biden administration have been barred from meeting and communicating with social media companies about content on their platforms. A Trump-appointed federal judge sided with Republican attorneys general in a lawsuit alleging the government went too far in encouraging social media companies to address posts they felt could contribute to COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy or upend elections. NBC News reports the ruling said government agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services and the FBI could not talk to social media companies for, quote, the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. The judge's ruling could go beyond speech, undoing more than a decade of work between the federal government and companies to curb criminal activity online. According to a White House official, the Department of Justice is, quote, reviewing the court's injunction and will evaluate its options in this case. This administration has promoted responsible actions to protect public health, safety, and security when confronted by challenges like a deadly pandemic and foreign attacks on our elections. NBC News reached out to Meta, Twitter, and Alphabet for comment, but have not yet heard back. Joining us now, technology policy reporter at The Washington Post, Kat Zakrzewski, and NBC News senior executive editor for national security, David Rohde. Good morning to you both. Kat, I'll start with you. So help us understand exactly now what the federal government cannot do that it previously was doing in terms of its communication with social media companies.
This is an extraordinarily broad injunction that could have major effects on a lot of the communications that were occurring between DOJ, various health agencies around the pandemic, and election misinformation. Now, the judge's injunction does have some carve-outs to allow the government and the companies to continue to talk about criminal activity, about voter suppression, but legal experts I spoke to expect that this will have a major chilling effect on ongoing communications. The order also limits some of the government's communications with academic groups that were studying disinformation on social media, like the Election Integrity Project, which is run by Stanford and the University of Washington.
So, David, there are some carve-outs here. There's like a crime is about to be committed. The government can still reach out to these social media companies. But there's real concern of people I talked to in the last couple of days about, first of all, misinformation on things like COVID or the next pandemic, whenever that might happen. But national security concerns as well with election disinformation and the like. People that you've talked to who study this all the time, what's their level of alarm after this?
They're very concerned. And what's happening is that, look, there were mistakes made by public health officials in the beginning of the pandemic, but there wasn't a vast plot to sort of to trick the American people into taking a vaccine that would harm them. And so you have a kind of talking point, a political talking point, turning into a court ruling. And that's what's so different about this. It's sort of reinforcing, these theories about what the government did and now restricting them. So should FEMA not warn people about a hurricane? I mean, this was a public health emergency. It's sort of a basic thing about the government trying to counter disinformation. And then the second thing is I've talked to current government officials who are very concerned about foreign interference or just deep fakes in the 2024 election.
Mike Barnicle, jump in.
David, would it be fair to look from a little bit, 50,000 feet down on this ruling and other rulings like it, to make the claim or posit the theory that in a way, the Federalist Society, Leonard Leo, and the former president with his judicial appointments have changed the course of the country's legal history and, in fact, has put a big handprint on the administration today because of these judicial rulings?
I want to say not yet, and that I think there's a good chance the Justice Department will appeal this and the Biden administration will push back. And then we'll have to see, again, where does the Supreme Court come down? And the broader trend is an increasingly political court system that's seen as making liberal or conservative rulings. Conservatives have said that the courts have been too liberal for too long. But the kind of hyper partisanship that we see in our politics is definitely infecting the court system. The judge who made this ruling, has made several. It was a Trump appointee, and he's made several other, conservative rulings like this. So that's the slow encroachment on the courts and on their credibility, their impartiality. The Supreme Court has, record low approval at this point. So this worries me. I'm a reporter. I try to, as I keep saying on the show, be fair and stick to the facts. And the courts need to do the same. They need to act as umpires, not players on either side of the partisan divide.
Kat, the intersection of politics and tech is so interesting at the moment, because I've also had senators on Capitol Hill from both sides saying to me that, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, want to do something about AI, for example, because they could see what it could mean for their own political campaigns. It would just be so easy for them to have pictures and video of them posted saying things they never said. But in this instance, there does seem to be a sort of, and I've heard it before from some conservatives saying that the whole theory of misinformation since 2016 is something that liberals are pushing, that it's against Republican candidates, particularly against Donald Trump. But what is the implication of all of this for 2024? Of this ruling and of this feeling that, that somehow misinformation isn't a real thing, even though we know that it is?
Well, you can't look at this ruling in a vacuum. We're at a moment where Elon Musk now owns Twitter and has taken tremendous steps to unwind the content moderation teams and workforces at that company. Meta, under financial pressure, has made major layoffs that have cut those teams. So really what we've seen since the 2016 election is a buildup of efforts to fact check and otherwise moderate content on these services. We certainly saw that play out in the 2020 election. And in the years since then, we've now seen this gradual unwinding, and this ruling only furthers those efforts.
Technology policy reporter at The Washington Post, Kat Zakrzewski, and NBC News senior executive editor for national security, David Rohde. Thank you both for walking us through this decision. We appreciate it. Coming up.